The FNAF graphic novels have been kinda hit or miss. While most of them are enjoyable reads, many of them are just so inconsistent and inaccurate, and some just don't have that amazing art that kinda takes me out of it. Obviously there's no way I can do better, but I feel like in general they just could be a lot better. The Silver Eyes Trilogy graphic novels are pretty decent in my opinion, but the Frights ones in particular are really hit or miss. Most of them are good, like Into the Pit, To Be Beautiful, Fetch, and Room for One More, but the New Kid and even more so Out of Stock are just a little bit questionable. But up until now, only 2 of the graphic novels have been out, but just a couple days ago now, the third Fazbear Frights graphic novel came out. In this video, I'll essentially be going over everything I think is worth mentioning in the whole graphic novel. Some stuff will be regarding quality, details on the characters' lines, questionably intentional or canon details in the art, and just anything else that I want to talk about. You guys often enjoy the videos on the graphic novel, so I will of course be doing them when the next graphic novel releases in December, and the next ones after that. But for now, let's get talking about the Fazbear Frights graphic novel, Volume 3. Number 1. I've talked in previous videos about the whole canonicity of the graphic novels. Some of my friends have a FNAF podcast called the Dark Rooms Podcast, and on it they've interviewed some really cool people like DeHusta, CG5, and even an official FNAF artist, Anthony Morris Jr., who worked on art for the graphic novel depictions of To Be Beautiful and Room for One More. In that Dark Rooms interview, he actually provided insight into how the art works. The scripts for each story are provided for them, and they have creative freedom to illustrate the story according to how the scripts go. They have creative freedom for the art, which is why there's often inconsistencies. While the dialogue is probably canon as the scripts are provided, the art isn't really. Obviously, these videos do talk about inconsistencies in the art, and I'm going to continue talking about those. In fact, most of what I talk about is those, and it's not really a huge problem or anything, but it's just something that I observe. One inconsistency of the sort actually appears on the very first page of the first story in the book, which is Step Closer. The animatronics here are designed like the FNAF 1 animatronics. However, Chica's underwear, I guess you would call it, is pink, which doesn't match FNAF 1 Chica. It does match the design of Toy Chica, but given the overall designs of the characters, that's clearly not what it's intended to be. Also, I just find it funny that Freddy's hat doesn't even fit on his head and is just bouncing on it somehow. Number 2. There's a part of Step Closer where Pete and his lab partner nicknamed Leather Jacket Guy are dissecting a frog in class, and Pete slips and falls and almost gets a scalpel right in the eye. However, in this scene, Leather Jacket Guy is depicted with purple hair, but then on the very next page, his hair changed to just being white. Number 3. One of the weirdest things I noticed about Step Closer in this book happens right after the scalpel incident, or to be more specific, it doesn't happen. In the original story, after Pete almost loses an eye from the scalpel, there's a scene where he goes to a butcher shop to get meat. I mean, obviously, because what else do you do at a butcher shop? Well, I'll tell you what else you do, you almost lose a hand. When Pete is at the butcher shop, a cleaver fell off the wall and barely missed his hand. After that, Pete goes fishing with his dad and all that in the aftermath of the buzzsaw incident. For some reason though, the butcher shop scene just doesn't appear in the graphic novel. My best guess as to why this is that Pete going fishing with his dad happens after Pete got cut by the buzzsaw, and his mom and him were skeptical about going fishing. The butcher shop happens between the 2 events in the original story, but the buzzsaw incident does kind of lead into the fishing part, so I think the reason they cut the butcher shop part is just due to the fact that it doesn't really add too much, but maybe it was something else. There's also a thing later in the story where Chuck talks about how there's been 3 events so far. The first was about his eye, the second about his arm, and the third about his eye, and the fourth one might be about his arm, and it ends up being about his arm. In the original story, the incidents went in the order eye, arm, eye, arm, so maybe this story is just trying to make it an actual pattern. Number 4. This is something that was in the original story, and I've talked about it before, but I wanted to mention it again here just because I think a lot of people forget about it. In more recent times, the idea of parallels in the FNAF books has grown simultaneously more and less popular. A lot of people use parallels in places where they probably shouldn't go, and others think the parallels in general just don't exist, but I'm of the belief the parallels definitely do exist and can be used as evidence, but should probably only be used as supplementary evidence to prove already existing ideas that already have evidence themselves, rather than crafting brand new theories based on parallels and thinking they're absolutely true without any other evidence, unless it's something that doesn't really alter too much and is more so just elaboration, like what we found in Springtrap making the Phantoms. One of the most influential parallels in the Fazbear Frights books was of Pete to the Foxy Bro, since he is an older brother who is forced to take care of his younger brother in his dysfunctional family and scares him with Foxy, then has nightmares, turns purple, and chews gum a lot. This is clearly meant to parallel Michael Afton, and I think what furthers this point, something that a lot of people forget about, is the fact that Pete and Chuck's dad has a very familiar name. Bill. Bill is short for William, the name of Michael Afton's father. Number 5. Surprisingly, there's actually even more stuff that this story did leave out. At Pete's pirate-themed homecoming, he ends up going through a maze and there's a guy dressed up that chases Pete through it. But Pete sees this guy as Foxy until he gets out. That whole maze part is completely omitted from the story. Even more strangely though is the finger trap. In the original story, when Pete sticks his hand into the finger trap, his entire hand gets stuck, and Maria, the girl who pulled that prank on him, was really apologetic and confused about what happened. Pete's hand being stuck in there is also what turned his hand purple, and I was actually excited to see that scene in graphic novel form, but unfortunately it was left out. Instead, here he just puts his hand in, the finger trap has teeth, and he jerks his hand back. It doesn't get stuck at all, and Maria isn't apologetic and tells him it was just a prank. I don't know why this stuff was changed, but it's too bad it was. Number 6. The end of this story is a bit weird because it isn't how it is in the original story. In the original story, the doctors say that since Pete is an organ donor, that they need to take an eye and an arm from him to give to someone who needs it. But in the graphic novel, they don't actually say that, and it makes the ending way less effective. Weirdly enough, they also even mention Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and even Foxy's pirate song that says you can be a pirate, but first you have to lose an eye and an arm. Not only is it just weird that this is happening at all, but it's also kind of screwed up for the doctors to sing this song while cutting off the organs of a dead kid. Also, right after that, Chuck goes to the maintenance room at Freddy's, determined to end the curse and beat the game, but then the story just ends there. And that doesn't match what happens in the original story where Chuck goes there and he finds that the song doesn't work anymore, not to mention that this story has nothing to do with the game, so it's just kind of weird. Anyway, that's everything from Step Closer, now on to the second story of the book, Bunny Call. Number 7. Bunny Call didn't have a whole lot of stuff to note in it, especially not as much as Step Closer. I only really noticed 2 things, and both of them are just inconsistencies. The first one involved Bob's wife, Wanda. When Bob is fending off against Ralpho, his wife is sleeping, and when she sleeps, she always has a mask and earplugs on. We see her wearing a mask in most panels where she's visible, but there's one where it just disappears, and also her shirt changes color from white to purple, then changes back to white again where she wakes up. Number 8. At the end of the original Bunny Call, the guy who runs the camp makes a speech about how he hopes everyone is having a lovely time and then apologizes that the Bunny Calls couldn't be done as the guy who usually does them wasn't able to. But in the graphic novel version, it's a random lady that does the speech. The reason this stuck out to me so much is because the guy at the end of the original was named Evan, and if I recall correctly, it was the first time I shared a name with someone in a Fazbear Frights story, so it kind of just stuck with me. I don't really know why they decided to change it, but I just feel offended, so let's move on to Hide and Seek. Number 8. This isn't really a significant detail at all, it's just something I wanted to mention. I think that Hide and Seek is 100% the best story in this book, and probably of all the Frights graphic novels so far. And I don't mean that it's the best in terms of the story itself. I actually think it's a good story, but probably the worst of the lineup, at least in this specific book. But I think that it by far has the best art. Of course, it's really detailed and the character designs look really good, but the shadow on Toby's back is illustrated really well, and the dream sequences and parts where the shadow gets angrier and angrier just look really cool. Panels like this one go hard. Number 10. Early on in the story, as Toby is heading over to the hide and seek game, he thinks about his brother's experience working at Freddy's and having all the arcade high scores. As he's thinking about this though, we see people, games, and posters on the wall behind him. These posters show the main Freddy Fazbear gang, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. But what's interesting to note is the designs of Bonnie and Foxy here. I don't remember the full story, but I'm pretty sure Bonnie's guitar in FNAF 1 was a copyrighted model or something, and so Scott ended up altering the design of his guitar, and we see the new design in FNAF VR. The design of Bonnie's guitar on this poster in the background is of the newer design. Also, Foxy's poster has something else from FNAF VR. Foxy is wearing a pirate's coat. It's Captain Foxy from the Pirate Ride minigame. I don't know if this stuff was specifically requested to be drawn, or if the illustrator just did it for fun or for attention to detail, but either way, I just think it's kinda cool. Number 11. This is another thing that was in the original story that I just think is really interesting. When Toby gets the shadow on his back, he's able to see it in the mirror, and other people can also see it in the mirror, but nobody can see it on his back except one kid. A kid that Toby thinks is really weird, named Reggie. Reggie's just a weird kid with the same Ronald McDonald looking ass wig Woody Harrelson wears at the end of the first Venom movie, and it's really weird that he's the only person who can see the shadow. I honestly don't really know why that is. It's possible he's like Eleanor in disguise or something, since we know hide and seek is the work of Eleanor, but I don't know, that'd be kind of weird, but let me know why you guys think that Reggie could see it. Number 12. In the original hide and seek, Toby intentionally throws himself onto a broken piece of the hide and seek game and dies. He does so on purpose, and the story ends with him happy and saying the words, "I won." He's at peace, he's happy. And the penultimate Fazbear Frights epilogue reinforces this, as when Larson sees the memory of hide and seek, Toby's dead body is still smiling, but here in the graphic novel, Toby accidentally kills himself when he sees a more monstrous giant version of the shadow, to which he stumbles backward into the broken set piece. Despite dying by accident, Toby is still at peace here, saying the words "I won," but he doesn't have a smile on his face like he does in the original story. And that is everything that I noticed in the Fazbear Frights graphic novel Volume 3. I personally think this one had much better artwork than the previous 2 books, and here's to hoping that the next one will be just as good. While yeah, there are definitely inconsistencies in the graphic novel, I think the reason behind that, being the artists are given free reign, is perfectly fine, and while I make these videos to mostly discuss the inconsistencies with the graphic novels, I do genuinely enjoy reading these books, and you guys seem to like the videos I make about them. So when Book 4 comes out at the end of the year, along with the FNAF movie novelization, I'll do videos on both of them. Although I'll be on vacation right after they come out, so I'll probably be a few days late as I'll read them while I'm on vacation, but whatever. But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, guys!